In today's video, we're going to walk you through an excellent retirement spending strategy if you have $2 million or more saved for retirement, and why that plan, the right plan, can make the difference between spending, say, $180,000 in lifetime taxes during your retirement or $500,000, $750,000 or more in taxes during your retired life. And that difference is crucial, especially as we see inflation continuing to rise, as market volatility seems to be a constant threat to our retirement portfolios, as things just look different for retirement than they did even 5 short years ago. As Mary Poppins once famously observed, borrowing from Aristotle, well begun is half done. So in today's financial prop video, we're going to walk you through step by step what that retirement spending plan can look like to help save you thousands, if not tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars in retirement taxation. I'm John Norberg, and welcome to this latest edition of the Financial Prof. So why do some retirees end up leaving a massive tip to the IRS every year in their retirement taxes, while others, with the same amount of money, don't? The answer really comes down to one thing, but it's rarely about income and it's rarely about investment returns and has almost nothing to do with how much they saved. But that one thing is what I like to call the default plan. You see, the default plan isn't something anyone chooses intentionally, quite the opposite. It's what happens when you don't choose. You could call it a lack of intentionality. You take what you need when you need it from whatever account is most convenient. You start Social Security when it feels right. You deal with taxes in April. And you assume that because you've been financially responsible your whole life, retirement more or less takes care of itself, right? Here's the uncomfortable truth. Retirement income exists not in a vacuum, but rather every dollar you withdraw interacts with everything else in your financial picture. Your Social Security taxation, your Medicare premiums, your future RMDs, your tax bracket. You pull the wrong lever at the wrong time, and you don't just pay taxes on that withdrawal. You can set off a chain reaction that follows you for years before you even realize it started. The retiree paying $500,000 in lifetime taxes isn't unlucky, they're unplanned. And the cost of being unplanned with $2 million isn't a rounding error, it's a second retirement account that you quietly hand over to the government over 20 years. The perfect retirement spending plan, on the other hand, has 5 components. Each one closes a door to the IRS that they would otherwise walk right through. And I'm going to show you exactly how each one works and what it costs to skip it. But before we get to step 1, I really want you to know something. These 5 components do not work equally hard in isolation. The real power comes when we look at them almost as puzzle pieces that we begin to assemble, one fitting into the next to the next to the next, to create a beautiful picture that truly allows us to see the beauty of what everything working together in tandem can be. So again, all of these steps work really well when you play them together rather than isolation. So let's get right into it. What's step 1? Sequence your withdrawals correctly. The foundation of any retirement spending plan is withdrawal sequencing, deciding which accounts to draw from first, second, and third. Now the general framework is this, right? Taxable brokerage accounts first, pre-tax second, Roth accounts last. Money in a taxable brokerage account is subject to long-term capital gains rates. That's 0, 15, or 20%, which is usually lower than your ordinary income rates that apply to every dollar you pull from a pre-tax IRA. Roth accounts, however, are tax-free and carry no RMDs during your lifetime, meaning they're the most valuable dollars in your portfolio, and we want those to grow as much as possible, so we spend them, typically speaking, last. Consider David, retired at 64 with $900,000 in an IRA, $700,000 in a brokerage account, and $400,000 in a Roth. He needs $80K per year to live on. If he goes straight to the IRA out of convenience, every dollar is taxed as ordinary income. That means his federal bill is $14K in year 1. If he draws from the brokerage first instead, paying long-term capital gains rates, that same $80K looks very different. And here's something worth noting. If David's married and his taxable income stays below $98.9K in 2026, he may pay no federal tax on those brokerage withdrawals at all, because that's the 0% federal capital gains rate for long-term capital gains. The standard deduction for married couples in 2026 is $32,200. And retirees over 65 get an additional deduction on top of that. So for a couple with modest income, In early retirement, drawing from the brokerage first isn't just cheaper than pulling from the IRA. In the right circumstances, it can be completely tax free. Same lifestyle, dramatically different tax bill, simply because of which account he pulled from first. Now, you might be wondering if the brokerage account runs out, well, what then? And that's exactly where step two comes in, because while David is living on his brokerage, there's something critically important he should be doing with his IRA at the same time. Something that most retirees tend to miss. And that omission is what I consider perhaps one of the, if not the, single most expensive mistake in all of retirement planning. So, step two is exploit the early retirement low income window. Here's something most retirees don't recognize until it's too late. The years between retirement and the age when required minimum distributions, that is, RMDs, begin are often the lowest income years of your entire financial life. And that window, if you know how to use it, is one of the most valuable opportunities in all of retirement planning. Before Social Security is underway, before RMDs begin forcing your hand, your taxable income is temporarily suppressed, and you have room in the lower brackets that you will never have again once those mandatory distributions start. The question is whether you use that room deliberately or let it go to waste. And the answer for retirees with large pre tax balances is Roth conversions. Take Patricia, 65, recently retired with $1.1 million in a traditional IRA and $850,000 in a taxable brokerage account. Her taxable income is low enough that she can convert 65 to 75,000 per year and stay comfortably in the 22% bracket, which this year runs up to 211.4K for married couples filing jointly. So she does this for 8 years. By the time RMDs arrive, she's moved over $550,000 out of pre-tax territory, paying 22 cents on the dollar now in exchange for 0 cents forever on everything that money becomes. The retiree who skips this window doesn't avoid the taxes, they defer them into a period when their income is higher, their brackets are fuller, and the IRS has more leverage. By 73, an untouched $1.1 million IRA may have grown to, say, $1.7 million. The first RMD is going to be about 65K. And here's what most people don't realize about that number. It doesn't arrive in isolation. It stacks on Social Security, on any other income, and when it does, it has a way of crossing thresholds that trigger costs the retiree never saw coming. Costs that compound year after year for the rest of the retirement. Those thresholds are exactly what step three is about. And if you've never heard of all three of them, I'm about to tell you what the most important 5 minutes of this video are about to be. Step three, manage your bracket around the three expensive thresholds. Every retiree with significant assets needs to know three numbers cold, three thresholds that, if crossed without intention, trigger some of the most expensive and least visible surprises in the tax code. The first is the Social Security taxation cliff. For married couples, once your combined provisional income exceeds $44,000, up to 85% of your Social Security benefits become taxable. Not a slope, not gradually, a cliff. $1 over, and tax. Now, whether staying below this threshold is actually feasible for you depends heavily on your portfolio makeup. If you have large RMDs, a pension, or significant investment income, you might not have enough room to avoid it entirely. But even in those cases, being aware of the cliff helps you minimize how far above it you climb. Crossing it carelessly when you didn't have to, well, that's the expensive mistake. Now, the second is the IRMA boundary. IRMA, of course, is just income-related monthly adjustment amount for Medicare. In 2026, married couples with modified adjusted gross income above $218,000 begin paying Medicare surcharges on top of standard premiums. The first tier adds roughly $2,100 per couple per year. And because it's based on income from 2 years prior, a poorly timed withdrawal or Roth conversion today shows up in your Medicare bill in 2028, long after you've forgotten what caused it. Now, the third is the 22 to 24% bracket boundary, which sits at 211.4K for married couples this year, as we discussed. A carelessly large Roth conversion, a large income bump from investments which are poorly allocated, or an unplanned IRA withdrawal, for instance, could all push you across it, costing you an extra 2% on every dollar above the line for no good reason. Here's where the consequences from step 2 become fully visible. The retiree who skips the conversion window and arrives at 73 with a $1.7 million IRA doesn't just face large RMDs, they stack on top of Social Security and push them straight through that 85% tax cliff every single year. In some cases, they might cross the IRMA threshold too, paying more for Medicare because of income they never chose to take from an account that kept growing because nobody intervened. And it could even add to net investment income tax, depending on the size of the overall portfolio, which stacks even further. The retirees who avoid this have guardrails. They model their income every year and calibrate their withdrawals, conversions, brokerage draws, charitable giving to stay on the right side of whatever threshold is most critical. The point isn't about perfection, but rather intentionality. Now, charitable giving, let's talk about that for a second. It brings me to step 4, because if you give to causes that you care about and you're not doing what I'm about to describe, then you're almost certainly overpaying the IRS with no good reason to do so. So, step 4, use QCDs or qualified charitable distributions to satisfy your RMDs tax free. Again, if you're charitably inclined, this is where this strategy really makes sense. You can only use it once you're 70 and a half or better. Now, there's a tool called QCDs, which most people have never even been told exists. Stands for Qualified Charitable Distributions. Here's how it works. Instead of taking an IRA distribution and then writing a check to charity, you direct the money straight from your IRA to the qualified charity, skipping yourself as the middleman, right? That distribution will both count towards your RMD and be deductible because it never appears on your taxable income in the first place. In 2026, you can do this with up to $108,000 per year. Consider Margaret. She's 74, taking RMDs of about $48,000 per year and giving $22,000 annually to causes she cares about. If she writes those checks from her bank account, funded by IRA withdrawals, she's paying ordinary income tax on that $22,000 that she gave away. And because she takes the standard deduction, there's no way to itemize. But if Margaret routes that same $22,000 directly from her IRA to her charities as a QCD, that money satisfies a portion of her required minimum distribution. It never touches her taxable income, and it keeps her provisional income below the threshold where 85% of her Social Security is taxable. The charity gets exactly the same gift either way, but the only question is whether the IRS takes a cut before it gets there. This is such a powerful strategy, and I wish more advisors talked about it on here. You see, for retirees with large pre-tax balances and genuine charitable intent, the QCD isn't a minor optimization. If it's deployed consistently, it is one of the most elegant and underappreciated tax reduction tools in all of retirement planning. And speaking of tools that most retirees ignore, step 5 is one that tends to get dismissed as too complicated, too niche, or not worth the trouble. So I want to address that directly because over a 20 or 30-year retirement, the retirees who skip it are leaving real money on the table. And more importantly, the best time to use it isn't in a good year, it's in a bad year. So let's talk about it. Step 5, harvest losses in your taxable account. Tax loss harvesting is the practice of selling positions in your taxable brokerage account that have declined in value, recognizing that loss for tax purposes, and immediately or near immediately reinvesting into a similar but not identical, and that's key, investment to maintain your allocation. Those harvested losses offset capital gains dollar for dollar, and after gains are fully offset, up to $3,000 per year can reduce ordinary income. Any remaining losses carry forward indefinitely. Think about what this means. In a year when markets pull back, and in a 20-year retirement, there will be several of them, let's just be honest, unless we see a record breaker 20-year run, right? A well managed brokerage account doesn't just weather that decline, it turns it into a tax asset. But there's a second element hiding inside that same down market that most retirees miss entirely. Remember the Roth conversion window from step 2? A market downturn reopens it at a discount. When your IRA's underlying assets are temporarily depressed, converting to Roth means paying fewer taxes because you're paying it on a lower value. And when those assets recover, the growth happens inside your tax-free IRA. Take Robert. He's 68, retired with a 600K brokerage account, and after a difficult market year, he's sitting on $50,000 in unrealized losses. He harvests those losses, rebalances into better positioned holdings, and generates zero net capital gains. He also takes the opportunity to convert $60,000 from his IRA to Roth while values are suppressed, locking in that lower tax basis before the recovery. He carries $3,000 in excess losses forward to reduce ordinary income the following year. Now, the alternative, ignoring cost basis, selling whatever is convenient or what you think is going to do well or poorly, but never looking at the tax lots and letting the down markets pass without any real action, well, that can generate thousands in avoidable capital gains every year, and it misses one of the best Roth conversion windows available. Tax loss harvesting is not an exotic strategy. Don't let anyone ever tell you otherwise. It's just disciplined housekeeping. And in a $2 million retirement portfolio, disciplined housekeeping turns into something significant. Right. So now that we've talked about all 5 steps, let's put them together into that beautiful puzzle so that it forms the portrait we were talking about earlier, and we can see the full picture. Bringing this back to where we started, that $320,000 gap. Over 20 years, a retiree who executes all 5 components of this plan versus one who follows the default plan, again, that lack of intentionality plan, can expect to save approximately this. Withdrawal sequencing, drawing from taxable first rather than pre-tax, saves roughly $40,000 in unnecessary ordinary income taxes in the early retirement years. Roth conversions during the low-income window eliminate tens of thousands of potential future RMD taxes and keep income out of higher brackets permanently. Bracket management, staying below the Social Security cliff and the IRMA thresholds if it's feasible, save an estimated $80,000 to $100,000 over the course of 20 years. QCDs eliminate taxes on charitable giving, $140,000 or more in tax-free generosity over that same couple of decades. And tax loss harvesting, combined with opportunistic Roth conversions in down markets, offsets gains and income quietly in the background while adding another $30,000 to $40,000 in cumulative savings, ignoring the tax-free growth. So the total is somewhere between $290,000 and $320,000 in taxes that a planned retiree simply doesn't pay, that an unplanned, unintentional retiree does. The same money, the same life and charitable intent, but the only variable is intentional planning. So, if you're watching this and wondering how your own situation stacks up and what you could do to make it better and more intentional, I will create a personalized 5-minute retirement plan video just for you that I'm going to customize based on your specific numbers. All you have to do is click the link in the description, answer a few quick questions about your situation, and I'll send that video right to your inbox. And there's no cost, no obligation. My simple offer to you to say, hey, we'd love to help. Robert Frost once wrote that 2 roads diverged in a wood, and that taking the one less traveled made all the difference. Retirement planning has its own version of that fork in the road. One road is unintentional. You take it because it looks easy or is easy, whereas the other is much harder. It's not well worn. It's a little bit harder even from the first step forward, but taking that intentional step quietly, persistently, year after year, being intentional and adjusting the plan as your life changes, that's what can make the 6-digit or more difference to how much you pay in taxes in your retirement. The retirees who pay $180,000 over 20 years aren't smarter than the ones who pay $500,000 in taxes. They're not luckier, they just asked a question most people never really think to ask. Not how much do I need, but how do I spend it? You spent those decades building what you have. A retirement spending plan is simply how you make sure as much of it as possible ends up where you intended, in your life, your family, and your causes, rather than on a check to the IRS you didn't have to write. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this, I'd encourage you to subscribe, and in the meantime, I'll see you out there.